Thank you for joining this session today. We're thrilled to be here with you to have a discussion around two really important issues that ChildFund Alliance has taken on. One is around advocacy and one is around raising children's voices. So I'm really pleased to introduce my esteemed colleagues here in just a moment. But before I get started, I just want to make sure everyone is aware of our Twitter handle and our hashtag. So for those that are following us online or would like to, we created a new Twitter handle. It's CFI Innovates, so CF Innovates. CF Innovates, okay? And then there are two hashtags that have been created, so feel free to join along. I love this one, hashtag aha moment. And then there's another one, CF Global. Okay, so we'll try to put those on the screen a little bit later, but just wanted to have that information out there. So, this morning I really was listening to Nigel and Mario and Chris and really hearing about kind of these big ambitions that we have as an alliance. And I think tackling advocacy and taking it on a strategic way is another really important innovation that we have as an alliance. Just about 3 years ago, the Alliance really started taking this on. For ChildFund International, this began with the start of our Destination 2020, our global strategy, that for the first time ever put the importance of policy advocacy front and center in our strategic objectives. And that's really started an organizational transformation. It's not something that you do overnight. It takes a long time to build the capacity, the networks, and yet what we know is that many of our country offices were already doing this work. It just might not have been called advocacy. So we're really excited to hear a bit more from our panelists today. I just want to highlight a couple of what I see from my role as some of the major achievements that we have had as an organization around this effort. In particular, led by Meg's team, we all took part in an effort to influence the global goals. So in 2015, for the first time ever, we now have a target called 16.2 that we're all quite familiar with that prioritizes the issue of ending violence against children. And that was really a collaborative effort across the Alliance to influence this. And we've been widely recognized, as Meg shakes her head, as playing an incredible leadership role at the global level. In addition to that, I think from my seat, what I see as most exciting is that our country offices, and not just ChildFund International, but across the globe, have really tackled this issue. They've created new positions. They've begun to look at the structural change around how we can influence that. And so it's really exciting to be here today to hear a bit more about that. And, just to kind of end with, why did we take on advocacy, right? There's a lot of things that ChildFund International would like to do and can be doing. There's a couple reasons. A, the external environment is demanding it. We're seeing more and more foundations prioritizing it. We're seeing it come across in proposals. What are you doing around policymakers? We also want to make our work more sustainable. No matter how much money we have, we're not going to have each and every dollar to reach all the children we want to reach. And I think importantly for ChildFund, it's really about social impact, right? That's what we care about. We want to ensure that every child has a chance to grow up free and healthy and safe. And we don't have the resources and the money to do that. So when the community, when the government takes on this work and puts this at the center, we're able to reach transformational change. So I am about to set up a really inspiring video, because the other thing you're about to hear about today is how we engage children and youth. And just as Chris said, we really need to think about safeguarding and our approach to safeguarding when it comes to advocacy. So you'll hear a little bit about that. But, I read this line from the Convention on the Rights of the Child last night, and it said front and center, adults make decisions for children all the time. But children have voices and opinions, and they need to be listened to and heard and counted, right? And that's the essence of what we're doing. So let me just tell you a little bit about this video you're going to see. Unfortunately, our ChildFund Uganda, the rockstar team that they aren't here. but we've had some discussions about sharing this with you. So for the last few years, led by Simba, our country director, they've really taken on a leadership role at a national level to prioritize the issue of ending violence against children. And they've been leading external coalitions with our partners, World Vision, SAVE. They're really at the forefront. They got to a point in 2007, so the summer of 2017, where there was a new Speaker of Parliament coming in, and they really wanted her to hear directly from the voices and experience of children. So the children you will see here are ones that actually spoke to members of Parliament. The Speaker of Parliament was so moved that she called a special session on violence against children, the first time ever to really hear about the plight of these children and sort of what their ideas are around solutions. So no more for me. Let's turn it over to the video and be prepared to be inspired.
Ignored.
You cry, but no one can hear you.
The men in the community, they rape girls and they steal children to get money.
Someone below 5 years old, they should not be working. Rape, early marriages, and school dropouts. Child marriage is like rampant.
Leaders, wherever you are, I request you to kindly listen to the voices of the children.
A child has a right to education.
We have a right to be protected.
We have a right to stay safe.
In our homes,
In our schools, and in our community.
Children have a right to play.
I want my leaders to know that children are living in fear.
That violence against children
And the exploitation of children.
is a very bad thing.
This should not happen in our world today.
Thank you for hearing our voices.
And for taking action.
So, yeah, clap for that. Now I would like to introduce my panel here. They've traveled far and wide from all corners of the world to be here today. And they are each going to have 5 minutes to present a specific sort of innovation around advocacy and engaging children's voices. We will then have an informal discussion and then open it up to the group. So my colleague to the left here, Sung-Young Lee, she is the manager of Advocacy. She leads the team there, and she has been with ChildFund for 10 years. And she's going to be talking about how ChildFund Korea changed its entire business model and focus from a service delivery and welfare agency to an organization that focuses on child rights and advocacy. So it's really inspiring. Welcome, Sung-Young.
Thank you.
And we have Davidson Jonah, the man that likely needs no introduction with his, especially with his new goatee that we like. And he is actually standing in, he's our Deputy Regional Director for West Africa. Unfortunately, our colleague in Sierra Leone, they put a lot of time and effort into the video that they produced, and they can't be here today. So we're really happy that Davidson's going to be here to share a little bit more about the work in Sierra Leone. And then we have Lien, the country director from ChildFund Vietnam, which is a part of our ChildFund Australia Alliance. She's going to be talking about the child-friendly accountability project that they implemented. And last but very not least, we have Paloma Gonzalez Paredes, who is the advocacy and communication specialist with ChildFund Mexico, and has led, her spunk and tenacity has led a fantastic effort to influence the presidential campaign in Mexico. So without further ado, let me turn it over to you, Sung-Young. Yes, and with this.
Nice to meet you. I'm from Sung-Young Lee from ChildFund Korea. Thank you for kind introduction. The topic of my presentation is shifting child welfare paradigm. ChildFund Korea was established in 1948 and starting the orphanage relief projects carried out supporting projects for poor children in Korea. In that time, there were weak policy and lack of preparation about child welfare. Although Korea has achieved rapid economic development, but child welfare system and facilities was still not enough. So ChildFund Korea actively engaged in projects where the government could not respond properly its accountability, such as foster care, prevention of child abuse, and searching for missing children. In 2008, we restructured our framework based on the UN Convention on the Rights of Child And in 2014, we established an advocacy team in the headquarters and also set up 8 advocacy centers in Korea. This year, we celebrated our 17th anniversary and declared shifting from as a traditional service deliverer to a child rights advocacy organization. There are 2 main reasons why ChildFund Korea changed our framework. First, unlike in the past, the problem faced by Korean children were very different. As Korean economy developed, government covers and supports basic needs for children. However, we need to consider the quality of life and happiness for children and want to listen the issue from children's perspectives. Second, in the past, Korean child-centered NGOs carried out the role as replacements of the government. However, now is necessary to carry to monitoring about government accountability and policy. For this reason, ChildFund Korea is trying to shift our role to a child rights advocacy organization. To become child rights advocacy organization, we need to change our positioning and framework beyond what we had been doing in the past. Here are some examples. Generally, we have been supporting hospital bill for vulnerable children who cannot afford to be treated. It was helpful, however, we could not support all. So we are working for change government health policy and system. We started to advocate for changing health policy about 0 fees for children. As a result, government changed the policy and it became to affect whole children in Korea beyond individual support. I will present to you another example regarding government policy related to children. Just experts and professors have made and proposed their opinions. There was no room to listen to children's perspectives. ChildFund Korea tried to help children to make their own suggestions. So the election were held in local and national level of Korea. We started a campaign called A Vote from the Future. Through the campaign, we analyzed candidates' pledge and collected children's opinions. With it, we made a children's proposal and disseminated children's proposal to all parties. This campaign was very impacted. In last presidential election, our children's proposal were reflected in the presidential campaign promise, and we are doing various activities with the children. Our activities received a lot of attention from media and citizens. Usually, government has considered NGO as a supplementary agency, but as we changed our framework focusing on advocacy, now we are working with them as a professional organization and meaningful partners to solve children's issues together. Politicians invite and consult with us about children issues. They try to reflect the views of ChildFund Korea and children too when they revise the law or policies. The context and situation of each country are very different, but I think the child welfare system in each country needs to be further developed by the implementation of international human rights standards. Hopefully, our change and challenge can be a good example to our colleagues. As countries become more developed and society changed, the role of NGOs will be and need to be changed. Lastly, as changing our role, the role of a child can be changed from a passive beneficiary to a person who make a dream a reality. And then children will be social actors who make a change with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sung Young. That was really inspiring. You can hold on to that. We'll give it to Leanne in a second. So our next project, as I mentioned, our team, the country director and the program director in Sierra Leone couldn't be here with us today. So they have produced a video, and just to set this up, this is happening in 2 districts in the northern part of Sierra Leone that's really focused on working directly with schools and with the Minister of Education to make schools more child-friendly, and in particular focus on the gender issues that girls are facing as they go to school and what prevents them from doing that. So we'll go ahead and play this video.
The Community Engagement for Improved Quality Education project is a project funded by ChildFund Korea and implemented by ChildFund Sierra Leone in Koinadugu and Falaba districts, northern Sierra Leone.
The Community Engagement for Improved Education, which we're implementing in Koinadugu and Falaba districts in Sierra Leone, has been really a wonderful eye-opener project. The key focus of the project focuses on the community, promoting community leadership for learning. What we do is mobilize communities for them to take a critical stake in education of the children. And what we are seeing is this helps to promote child protection, because as part of the community structures that have been established as actually youth and children a child agency, we prepare the children to be able to participate and identify issues that affect them. And in this particular project, children have identified issues such as child marriage, teenage pregnancy, corporal punishment.
Apologies for this. Let us know if Davidson needs to step in, or if you think you'll get it back. I prayed to the technology gods this morning, so I think it wasn't answered. They don't listen sometimes. Davidson. Okay, Davidson.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the project?
Yeah, exactly. So the focus, like Mustafa was saying, is mobilizing communities so they become a part of the educational process. Normally, in our parts of the world, the communities are not considered in the decisions that are made. Children's voices are not amplified. But the focus here is to have the community be a part of the process in designing and even looking at what's going to be taught through the curriculum. So there are several committees that we are established. They have a monitoring committee set up by the parents. They have also an accountability committee that's set up by the parents. And these committees have time and sessions with the school authorities, both teachers as well as government representatives. What's the innovation here? We have parents who work with school authorities, like I said, to design the curriculum. So part of what is important for the community forms part of the school curriculum. In addition to that, we have children who have intergenerational dialogues. They sit and talk with their parents and leaders in the community to be able for them to learn what is missing in the educational process. And so once these are discussed, all of these are fed into the educational system, and therefore there is a great commitment between the providers of education and the people who benefit from the educational process that's taking place. Now, there's been a lot of benefits from this. Children are now much more engaged. The girls go to school without any fear. There is an environment that is created that welcomes people, or that welcomes the children to learn more about what is going on in their community.
Thanks. Davidson, before you wrap up, can you just say a little bit about engaging the Minister of Education and how that worked and the support there?
Yes, when the project started, it was like, why should we have parents talking to us about what we want to teach our children? we are in charge of the curriculum. Government has given us the authority. But it took a lot of discussion, like Mario and the other Chris said. Innovation is not just bam, bam, bam. There's a lot of time. There's time for negotiation. You talk, you show people reason, you have your data, you have evidence to show that if the parents are involved, it makes things a little bit much more better. Children feel part of it, the community themselves feel part of it. So after a series of negotiation, different types of meetings, the educational authorities begin to see reason, and now they are even a greater part, they're a proponent of the whole idea. They want to move it now to other communities to show that there is good in having parents and children be part of the educational process.
Thanks, Davidson. That's an important point. Great. So now we are moving on to Leanne, who will talk a little bit about child-friendly accountability and the work that her team has done to pilot this Alliance initiative.
Thank you, everybody. My name is Lin, Country Director from ChildFund Vietnam. I would like to introduce quickly about the Child-Friendly Accountability Toolkit. The short-term project is the first phase happened in like 4 months, from March 2017. And after that, we have the review for improving the toolkit a little bit, and we implemented the second phase for around 4 months more until July 2018. And follow-up project implemented. Now is thinking and reviewing the toolkits again to see how we can adapt it better. So coming back to the first day in 2017, why we chose and selected to implement this toolkit. It's very importantly that in 2016, the government Vietnam issued the official law of children. And it's very important, it's replaced another very old law in 2004, and with very clear definition about the child right and the service needed for the child right, as some others, very specific program to implement the law for the child right. So, and besides that, before this toolkit, surely that there's some other projects implemented by other NGOs to raise voice and to involve children for their feedback, but actually it's not very effectively because there's not structure system or even there's not toolkits. Sometimes like forum, the nation they run the every 2-year forum for the children where the children can share their voice, but finally the impacts cannot be measured. And there's still the limitation awareness, the limited awareness from the children and from the student about their rights. Even that on the communication and the government channels, a lot say about the children law, but not sure they understand what exactly their right and what the duty bearer is doing for that. So that's the reason why each children is selected to do pilots in one commune in Bacan province. And there's the beginning of the project, we chose a selective and targeted student at the high school, and we selected both in school and drop school. We were introduced to the drop out schools by the community, and we have to connect each individual. And finally, we have only 7 kids out of the 36 students attend at the beginning. So, and then in the phase 2, we moved to the city to see that how the difference between the people at the rural area with the student at the rural area and the city urban area. And finally, we will see that the video clip to talk about that how the children involved in the process, but there is a very big challenge is because the law is very complicated, even with us. To read like hundreds of pages of that is not easy. So now white children, it's the first time they read such complicated legal documentation, and now they have to find out what's the gap between the law and the practice, and their voice, and then the action, how to do that, even that the authority, they welcome the children to give the voice, but they're still not very willing and ready for receiving the action that done by the children. There's still big challenges. And how to measure the impact, the voice of children, yes, the local, they welcome the voice of children, but what? Then what change in their decision? Not yet seen about that. So it's the thing that you think about the phase 3, where you can have some adaptation that to improve the situation. And now can you press on the clip that to share the children activities.
tham gia CFA thì mình cũng chỉ được học có 4 quyền ở trong sách giáo khoa, còn mình không biết là mình có rất nhiều quyền và có rất nhiều người đứng sau để bảo vệ.
Cháu không biết là cháu có nhiều quyền như thế. Ngoài ra thì mình chả biết gì thêm.
Trong thời gian vừa rồi, mình đã cùng nhóm đến Sở Y tế để hỏi các cô chú về việc bảo vệ trẻ em. Chúng mình không biết đặt những câu hỏi nào cho phù hợp, nhưng mà cô ấy cũng rất là hợp tác và cô ấy đã trả lời được cho mình rất là nhiều kiến thức hay.
Đi đến Sở Lao động Thương binh và Xã hội và Hội Phụ nữ và còn Hội Khuyến học nữa, bạn rất là vui và háo hức, cảm thấy cho mình tiếp thu thêm được những kiến thức quan trọng về bảo vệ trẻ em.
Mình đã đi Sở Lao động Thương binh và Xã hội ạ. Mình rất thấy tự tin sau khi đi phỏng vấn các cô chú ở sở. Ngoài tự tin thì có hiểu biết thêm về các quyền và các quyết định của tỉnh Bắc Cạn về luật bảo vệ trẻ em.
Nhóm mình đã được đi đến văn phòng ChildFund và Ủy ban Nhân dân xã. Mình gặp khó khăn là khi mình đi đến đấy thì mình rất là lo sợ và run. Lần đầu hỏi thì mình không dám hỏi, còn lần sau mình tự tin hơn, mình đã dám đặt ra câu hỏi, biết nhiều về các luật về bảo vệ trẻ em.
Đây là lần đầu tiên mà các trẻ em mà đến gặp trực tiếp mình để hỏi về những thông tin liên quan đến trẻ em. Tôi nghĩ là cần phải tạo cơ hội cho trẻ em đến gặp và trao đổi với chính quyền địa phương, khuyến khích trẻ em thông qua các buổi tuyên truyền ngoại khóa hoặc là diễn đàn trẻ em.
Cô rất vui mừng vì thấy rằng là các bạn đã có cái sự hiểu biết rất nhiều về bản thân, về quyền và trách nhiệm. Sự tự tin nó thể hiện rõ trên khuôn mặt cũng như là trên cái cách thể hiện của các bạn.
Thank you, Leanne. That was really great. And I just want to underscore 2 points that I thought you made, which were critical around the complexities of laws and how difficult it is for all of us to understand, and while we're engaging, how that works, and also the challenge of measuring impact. So we'll come back to revisit those themes, but really important notes. All right, we are now to our Mexico colleagues. Paloma, welcome. We would love to hear from you about the work that your team has done to influence the presidential election around the rights of children. So first we're going to play a video and then Paloma will speak.
Esta es nuestra voz.
Uno de los problemas es que jóvenes, niños o niñas pierden el interés al momento de estudiar porque cada persona aprende de distinta manera. Esto ocasiona el aburrimiento al estudio y salirse de estudiar, lo cual ocasiona que estos entren a grupos delictivos y ocasione la violencia. Lo que debería hacerse es operativos sin violencia de estos grupos delictivos y también revisar los modelos educativos para cubrir necesidades de cada uno de los estudiantes.
Los tipos de violencia que más hemos visto en nuestro país fue la violencia política, la violencia intrafamiliar, la inseguridad. Exigimos la palabra del gobierno, que no nada más cuando apenas la van a elegir, cuando apenas van a votar las personas mayores de 18 años. No, sino que cumplan, y luego a veces cuando quedan ni cumplen su palabra.
I thought that was the best way to enter. So this video was shot at a workshop we had at the beginning of the year with children from 10 different states from the country, and they gathered together even though they weren't just children enrolled with ChildFund, but with other organizations that focus on children, and they were able to discuss and to connect and to talk about what were the problems that they considered crucial in their communities, how they lived violence, and what solutions did they see at the horizon and that they could propose. So I'm sure a lot of you have read about in the media what a big year was in Mexico. 2018 was the biggest election we've had in history. 3,000 public offices were up to election, including the presidency. So this was a big opportunity. The playground was completely changing at a political and social level. So we needed to be on top of that. And what we did was, from what the children told us, we kind of sort of translated that into a technical document with indicators, with proposals, with what would the government need to change in order to accomplish what these children are asking for. So if you see, and what you've seen in the video also, and on this slide, is a very rich range of subjects, and they go from budget to changing the educational model to the protection system. So it's a very integrative proposal. And this was from the voices of children and youth. These are their proposals. So we realized that we needed to do more with this context. We needed to do it faster. So we needed to come with a better solution for this problem that we have and for this opportunity that was 2018. And what we decided was, we seated with our partners and we said, you know what, we need to get rid of all of our logos, and we need to put at the first place what we are working with, that is children and youth's well-being. So that's the important part, and that's what we need to focus on, and that's more important than our names. So we decided to get rid of those and to create this. This is a movement called México por la Niñez, which translates into Mexico for the children. And it's a platform that we were able to grow, and it had the power to have all of the presidential candidates in one room signing these 9 commitments with children and youth at a national level. So we were able to have a broader impact. We went from 28,000 children that are sponsored, that are enrolled with ChildFund, to 40 million that are going to be the ones who are engaged with this change in the laws and in the budgets and all that. And we also attacked structural changes, and it was cost effective because everything was shared with all of the organizations. So I just want to go out with this, that as child advocates, we have the duty to rise to the level of what these new humans want for the world, not from the world, for the world, to do it beautifully, compellingly, because they deserve no less, and we all deserve no less. Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you all. I told you this would be an inspiring group. So what we would like to do now is to have a little bit of a discussion up here around some of the lessons learned, some of the challenges and opportunities, and then open it up to the group, okay? So colleagues, I would like to put this first question to all of you. It's kind of really perfectly aligned with where Paloma ended, around why it was so important to engage children themselves, and to not do it as an NGO saying we speak for children, but directly speaking to them about their hopes, desires, and dreams, and why that was critical to the success of your work. So anyone can feel free to jump in there.
Okay. I tell you what, from my experience, and when I engage with the country office, and I also do visit the communities, what we've come to learn is that children's voices are genuine. They are powerful. Why? Because they live with the situation every day. They discuss it. So they have critical points to bring when they do have a discussion. We've seen that during the intergenerational discussion. With children are making their points. They're putting it across as someone who lives and feels it, not like me or Mustafa or whoever speaking on their behalf. And when that happens, it brings commitment from all levels.
Thanks, Davidson.
I have a similar example, so I will want to tell you. In Korea, the life-threatening factors of children were very different. In the past, poverty and illness were most serious problem. But now children died and injury by road traffic accident is top cause of children's death currently. So ChildFund Korea is advocating to solve this problem. So we ask children when and how they feel dangerous on the road. Some children said that they felt dangerous when they waited for a traffic light to change on the road. So we painted the place to yellow. We call that project Yellow Carpet because many children feel dangerous in that spot. Actually, drivers cannot find children, so many accidents arise there. And without asking children, we didn't know that problem. So it's important to give children to the right to be heard. Children problems become more diverse. So problem must be defined from children's perspective, and problem must be solved with children. We take for granted women's policies should be discussed with women, and disability issues should be discussed with disability with persons. Likewise, children must be involved to solve in their problems.
That's great. Really important. Thank you, Sung-young, and interesting about the traffic example. So Leanne and Paloma, yes, Paloma?
Yes, I agree with all of you. And I also consider that if we are looking to accomplish better societies, more equal, more just societies, we need to be really aware that age is not a qualification. It's not something that should measure if you're a better human, a more accomplished person, if you are smart enough to do some comments. I think children in most cases grow up very quickly and they become more of an adult than most of us are sometimes. So we need to understand that, and we need to build on that too, and to acknowledge the right to be involved in their community's decisions because they are part of it. And also if they get involved from an early age in that, and if they are aware of that, they will become very committed citizens and we'll have better communities and a better world.
Great. Thanks, Paloma. I really like that age is not a disqualifier. It's powerful. Leanne?
I think that people have talked a lot about the importance of participation and the voice of children. And I just quickly share my personal experience, my case. When she's 3 years old, one day she's in the car and she tells a story, and based on the picture, and I think that, okay, her story is not logical very much. And I try to fix it. And she turned to me and she said that, "Mom, it's your story, but I'm telling my own story." So I think it's right. Yeah. But sometimes, even that working in the NGO and working for the child right, but sometimes we think that we need to help and fix our case and to help them mature through our experience. But they understand very well that what they want to do and what they aim for, even that from their young age. Yeah. So that's why I fully support that, to respect them and to show in the daily life and until our work at the community. So you need a strong commitment for that.
Great. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank you.
I think we can all relate to the parenting struggles around who makes decisions for children. I'd like to actually pass this next question back to you, Leanne. Chris talked about how do we safeguard children in sport. And this organization has taken on a really serious effort around our safeguarding efforts and what that means and how it touches every part of the business. And so I think it's important that we also think this as we're raising our advocacy voice and muscle and growing in that capacity, that we're thinking about how we safeguard children and protect them as we engage them in these types of opportunities. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you guys thought about that as you advanced child-friendly accountability.
I think that actually in ChildFund Australia, you are very serious about that. So like, I think that you have been reviewing many times before it called child protection and then child safeguarding policy, and they try to ensure our good compliance for that. It's not in our project, but also in our operational life at work. So for this, especially for this one, we understand that advocacy, it means that we involve the children in working with the duty barrier and with their very bureaucratic system. And maybe they never been experienced before, and you're not sure again about their parents' thought and permission or not. So that's why you think about many risks that it can, when you involve children, and can harm them. So we do it very clearly and carefully at the beginning. So you involve the parents in the meeting consulting process with us, with the community, with the teacher at the school. And we also involve in the authority to see that how they're willing to rent their time to have the meeting and explain things with the children and with the student. So that's why you have the consent form and have on the procedure to ensure that the parents allow their children to involve in the activity, and also the parents commit to arrange time to take their children to the office where they meet the duty barrier. So, and so from ChildFund, when they have some trip and children to involve the children, you need to always ensure that there's one caregiver like to protect, to look after the girls and boys in accommodation, everything, to ensure that the checklist of all the things you need to do according to our child safeguarding policy. And in fact, it's likely you see that, of course, the children, the students, they are volunteer to do that. They understand what they need to do and everything, and you show those ones that enthusiastic and volunteer to do that, and their parents the same. So sometimes even that ChildFund don't have anybody accompany them to ChildFund, to the people in committee to work, but their parents will take care of the group of the children. And then luckily you see that it's the duty barrier and the officer that they're very happy to share. They feel excited about that too, because it's the first time in their life that they explain to the kids and the student about that something that they think that is the adult job. So during the process that we always care about the safeguarding for the student involved in our project.
Thanks, Leanne. So a big resource here in how ChildFund Australia was able to roll that out. I'd love to turn this next question to talk a little bit about challenges. And we've talked a lot about kind of the excitement and the opportunities and the momentum you all have built. So in particular, Paloma and Sung Young, I'd love to hear you guys talk about sort of the internal challenge. You've done a beautiful job, Sung Young, of explaining that to us around it really was a culture shift for your organization around service delivery to advocacy and child rights. And then some of the external challenges around influencing a presidential election and what that was about. So Sung Young, would you like to tackle that?
As you already saw in my presentation, Korea's child welfare began to solve a poverty problem. So ChildFund Korea had been playing a role as a service provider. So STEP had been focusing on the traditional child welfare. So they feel difficult to act as an educators, and they also feel difficult to find more fundamental and structural problems, not individual problems. So we have a lot of workshop and training relating child rights advocacy, and we are explaining STEP should be not only service provider, but also change agent. And many supporters and people still think the role of NGOs just helping poor people individually. But as advocator, we solve the problem in more sustainable way and make a happier environment. So I think it is necessary to make a continuous effort to inform and explain the reason and the effectiveness as a being advocacy organization internally and externally.
Thank you. That's great. Paloma, what would you like to add?
Yes, I think everyone will relate to what I'm about to say. When somebody asks you, what do you do for a living? And you say, I work at ChildFund and we work with children and all that. People almost always answer, oh, what a pretty job. Like a pretty thing. And it's because people are not aware of how troubling that is too, like how many circumstances the children face that are related to violence, that are related to security issues, and people are not aware of that as a society. And that also happens to politicians and to decision makers. When they signed these commitments that I told you, nobody was gonna say no, right? Because it's children. And it's a pretty thing. So it's like a soft subject for them. But once you get into the conversation of, but we need budget, and this is related to security, and this also affects economy, and this also touches a lot of social issues, they kind of get scared, right? Because they thought it would be easier, and that there wouldn't be a lot of arguments about that. So that's a huge issue that I find a big challenge, not only with decision makers, but also with our societies, and we need to raise awareness about that too.
So well said, Paloma. And just picking up on the fact around implementation and budget allocation, right? We have lots of really good laws that are in place across all of these countries, and this is where the rubber meets the road, and it's really hard. But I also appreciate you bringing that children's issues are seen as softer, right? And so how do we change that dynamic and that discussion and that theme, that these are, fundamental to the rights of a country. So thank you, Paloma. So then I would just, before we open it up for question and answers, I would just love to hear from each of you a line or a sentence around kind of what this work meant to you or to your country office, and what you would like to share with the audience as we turn to question and answers.
I remember one of children who participated the policy proposal campaign. The child said to me, "Thank you very much for asking our thoughts." When I heard it, adults only asked children just like test score or math formulas rather than what they wanted to talk about. And adults often ask children what they want to do becoming adults in the future rather than what they want to do right now. Children are not only our future, but also human beings live with us now. So the last thing I want to say is the UN Convention on the Rights of Child states all children have evolving capacities. The immaturity of children is not the proof of the inadequacy. It's the power to grow. So if we believe children have evolving capacities and act with children, any innovations will be possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Sung-young. Mr. Jonah.
Okay. Two important things here. Listening to children's voices, what they say. I mean, my colleagues have said that in very different ways. And also working with stakeholders. Mm-hmm. Many of us know the song by a very important artist, yeah? Or a very popular artist. Who feels it, knows it. So the children feel it, and they know it. So for us, listening and hearing what they have to say, and they also have the solutions. So we must listen to them. And working with stakeholders, parents, community leaders is very, very important. That's a big lesson learned for us as we work with children. So once you work with them, you listen to them, all the chores that will prevent the children from going to school on time, for being there for some extracurricular activities, disappear. And then they come and work with you.
Thanks, Davidson.
When actually 5 years ago, when we started to talk about our strategic, country strategic, and talk about that, what we can do differently to bring the more and stronger added value for the children. And I'm thinking about a lot, and I love the message from ChildFund Australia when he say that because every child needs a childhood. To me, it's quite simple. It's about the childhood. A lot of things is complicated. You do a lot of things. Of course, it's not easy for all. It's difficult. But why? And come back. You just think about that. What the well-cared and safe childhood for all the children. So it's simple like that. So try to do all the best thing for us around. So to me, it's very important, and I love the message that in Vietnam that we try in the our card visit. I have that message too, because every child needs a childhood, and what the childhood, safe childhood, a well-cared childhood, you try to struggling around that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thanks, Leon. Paloma.
Yes. So I went to the Senate 2 weeks ago, and this was a different session. They opened the mic for a 15-year-old girl, and she was talking about how important children and youth participation is. And then she started talking about the problems that youth have that won't let them participate in that, right? And she was talking about addiction, about the problems within their communities, the violence and everything. And then she stopped and she said, but sometimes all we children need, it's a little inspiration. And that really struck me, and I think that's something that I want to share with you, that we are very responsible to give them that inspiration, to be those persons that they look up to or that they want to hang out with sometimes. But yeah, that I hope that we are an inspiration.
Thanks, Paloma. Wonderful. So we have just a few minutes. Clap for them. Great job. We have about 5 minutes. We have a microphone here. Please, if you could introduce yourself before you ask your question. Welcome. Paul's getting your back. He's next. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel Araneta, Program Director in the Philippines. And I was hoping to engage the panel a little bit more on child protection and child safeguarding. So in the Philippines, we have experience in advocacy, but as we're moving towards some more complex and sensitive issues, I think it gets a little bit more complicated. So it's one thing to engage children and youth in issues like access to education or protection against corporal punishment, but now we're moving into issues like LGBT rights and online sexual exploitation of children. And we've come to realize that there are so many more risks in engaging children in advocacy on issues like these. And recently in the Philippines, working with some other organizations, we had a summit on online sexual exploitation of children, where children came up with a manifesto that they presented to stakeholders on this issue. But we, the partners, decided against having a press conference in which the children would address the media, because some of the children who were participating had been previously engaged in online sexual exploitation, and we felt that it was too risky to expose them to the media and have them speak on this very, sensitive issue. And so I was hoping to talk with the panel a bit more on, how do you deal with these kinds of issues? We have policies in place, we know how to, protect children, but then, when you're moving towards uncharted territory, it becomes a little bit more complex, and I was hoping we could hear experiences talking about, highly political, very sensitive issues, and, children can be a very powerful voice to speak on these kinds of issues, but also how do we manage the risk of engaging them?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isa. Wonderful question. So, panel, would one of you like to respond? I also was going to offer a little bit of insight, but please.
You scared us.
Yeah, it's that like in ChildFund Vietnam, like we mentioned a little bit about phase 3, because you come back to that when is the challenges, you say that the children law is quite complicated for them too, not only for the children. And that's why now thinking about that, how to adapt some model, like we can involve and ask students which policy and which procedure that they're really interested in, that they care about. And we can split in the smaller team So that's why where the children feel confident about that, they're interested about that, and maybe they have their parents' support in that area. It's something that we try to make it smaller and is realistic to the each child and their interest, their capacity, and they care about that. And of course from that, we're thinking about that. Of course, you need to be in the capacity because the children are not immediately that they can give the voice, because we need to give the training for them, like sometimes like teamwork and like presentation and how to reading and summarizing. There's many skills that during the process that the children can have. At the same time, like consent, like of course, it not happened yet, like LGBT and some sensitive issue that they mentioned, it's not happened yet in our project, but I'm not sure that I just assume it's like it's happened in Vietnam already. I'm not sure that it's lucky or not, but actually in Vietnam, the government, of course, there's many things that talk about them, but there's a good point is like the LGBT and the law, everything is quite open in Vietnam. And at the moment, we're working with the one partner. They are specialized. We are not specialists in that area, but like IC is our local partner. They are professional in that area. And we're thinking about that. We cannot work alone for that area. That we are not expertise. We have high expertise in that. We collaborate with the NGO or with other organizations. They are very strong in that. Of course, when they're strong in that, it means that the experience in that area, they know what to do, and they have the good relationship with the duty bearer related to that. So in this specific area, we work with IC, and who that we do think that they're better than and not more knowledgeable than us in that. We not work alone.
Thank you, Leanne. I think the partnership piece is important. I think the other thing, Isa, that's striking me about this is that we have to be quite clear that there are some issues that are too risky to involve children in, right? And that needs to be a part of our assessment around risk. So I just want to have my colleague here, Stephanie Perlson, raise her hand. The team has done quite a bit of work around advocacy risk assessments. We have lots of risk assessments at this organization. We need to, right? From security to other types of risk. This is something that has been identified as something that we are weak on right now. And so we are not wanting any sort of advocacy to be happening unless there's a proper assessment around that. And so one thing that I'm thinking about, Isa, that we could do, we have tools and resources to share, but networking country offices that are dealing with this, right? In particular, thinking about some in the Africa context, Ethiopia, where advocacy is essentially outlawed, that might be a way that we can support each other as we go into this new phase. It was a really, really great question. Thank you for it. I think we have time. I believe we stand between you and lunch, which is always a dangerous, but please, Paul, the last word.
Yes. I thought you were not going to let me, but now I have. No, it's not a question. It's just a compliment a bit to the information, especially where Paloma, was talking about, and it has to do with your question also, I think, because on these topics, especially as we get into those more contentious topics, it's really important we work in alliance with others.
Yes.
And in the morning session, the plenary, it was mentioned that first of all, we need to work as a ChildFund alliance. And where Paloma was talking about, where she showed the 4 organizations coming together on a single message, that's actually part of a wider global initiative where we are acting as a ChildFund alliance, the Joining Forces initiative, where 6 organizations in Mexico, Plan International is not present, that's why they were not there, but Plan International, World Vision, Save the Children, ChildFund, Terdes Home and SOS are working together to jointly support children and youth in identifying innovations to address violence and to bring that up to the national level in an advocacy forum, as Paloma was talking about. And we have 6 countries. We're involved in 5. Educo is involved in El Salvador. We're definitely going to look at in the coming year or 2 years are expanding that. But that's one side. The other side of the initiative, there are 20 countries, and that involves several alliance members, where now at this moment they're doing joint assessments of child rights as an input into next year when it's 30 years of the Child Rights Convention, and really have a voice as child-focused organizations together on what we see as the biggest gaps in the delivery on child rights. So really working together as a ChildFund Alliance, and beyond that with the other organizations focused on children is, I think, a critical part of managing those type of risks, and be able to have a much stronger voice.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So just to close, first of all, thank you, panel. This was really fantastic. Appreciate the questions. One thing that struck me this morning is about ambition, right? This word came up. And I think that what we have seen across the Alliance is that we have a big ambition around growing our advocacy capacity, and how do we make that work in the right way of testing versus testing versus kind of going big. And I would just say there's quite a bit happening in the global space in 2019. We have the review on the Convention of the Rights of the Child, and we have the first ever review of a number of sustainable development goals that we have been working on. And so this is a real moment for the Alliance to come together, and we'll be talking to CEOs a little bit about that more. But I just wanted to end with kind of some quotes that really struck me during this panel. One, advocacy is hard to measure. The impact is difficult, and how do we get better at that? How do we engage duty bearers and policymakers from the beginning so that we're not just presenting findings at the end? How do we ensure that the budget discussions, that implementation of laws are front and center in our efforts? Our children are our future. And they're not just our future, but they are people now that we need to listen to. And I really loved what Davidson said about that song, right? If people feel it, they know it. And so really the powerful messenger we have in children is a really important asset. So thank you all for being with us today. I have one more announcement on lunch. Okay, you can pick up your box lunch in the foyer on level 2, and you can eat in E21C where we had plenary, which I think is here. So pick up your box lunch, eat here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.